Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 28 based on novel. So let's start. 5 individuals hovered in mid-air. After which, the surrounding din seemed to have died down a little at a time. Those eyes, which were looking at these figures, were filled with rich respect and fear. Clearly, Mang Mountain posed a greater deterrent as compared to the newly formed For Titan's Palace. Amidst this silence, Lin Dong was observing those 5 individuals. 4 of them were wearing blood-red gowns and their faces were filled with haughtiness and arrogance. However, the faint yet frightening ripples radiating from their bodies made others aware that they indeed possessed the qualifications to act in this arrogant fashion. In between the 4 of them was a man wearing green clothes. That man had both his hands behind his back and he was quite handsome. His brows did not hold the same arrogance as the other 4. However, as he stood amongst the 4 of them, he displayed an unique and noble aura. In fact, the 4 of them paled in comparison when compared to him. Clearly, amongst the 5 kings of Mang Mountain, he should be mysterious King Luo Tong, a top expert who came from the 9 Phoenix tribe. The 9 Phoenix tribe was also an overlord tribe which had originated since the ancient times. Their noble aura was akin to that of the proud demeanor of the celestial demon Martin tribe and the distant majesty of the dragon tribe. That man in green clothes looked at the distant 4 Titans' palace in a nonchalant fashion. However, unlike the 4 individuals around him, he did not mock them. Of course, this was not because he was more well-mannered than them. Rather, it was because he thought that they were not worthy of his attention. We have yet to start the Sky Battle Arena fight. What is there to be proud of? The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was clearly filled with resentment towards Mang Mountain. Hence, he chuckled after hearing the other party's ridicule. Ha, Heaven Dragon, we just met a while back. However, it seems like you have become much more arrogant. A man wearing a blood-red gown chuckled while he stared at Heaven Dragon with mocking eyes. This person was called Tong Feng and he was the Eastern King of Mang Mountain. It must be because he managed to obtain some allies. Standing beside Ting Shan, the Southern King Ting Lin glanced at Lin Dong and Little Flame, before he mocked, "You must be the new demon commander of Deep Lightning Mountain, am I right? I have heard a lot of rumors about you recently." "That's right, the mysterious divine palace is in your hands, am I right?" Lin Dong's eyes narrowed after hearing the words mysterious divine palace. Many people knew that it was the divine item treasury, but there was hardly anyone who knew that it was in fact the mysterious divine palace. However, the other party had managed to identify it immediately. It was likely that they were also quite knowledgeable about the mysterious divine palace. "That item is indeed in my possession. However, there is no reason for me to hand over something that lands in my hands," Lin Dong smilingly said. The Eastern King Tong Feng chuckled upon hearing this. After which, he stared at Lin Dong and said, "Relax, I am not asking you to hand it over. This is because I will snatch it personally. I'm afraid that you don't have the ability to do so." Little Flame's expression was vicious as he laughed coldly. Truly a bunch of rascals that do not know their limits. The Western King Tong Hua curled his lips and said. He was clearly displeased with the fact that this newly formed alliance actually dared to challenge their Mang Mountain. What is the point of uttering such nonsense? Let's follow the rules and fight. You do not have the qualifications to decide if you want to hand it over. The green-clothed man spoke in a faint voice. He clearly possessed quite a high status in Mang Mountain. Hence, the other 4 kings nodded after he spoke. Meanwhile, his eyes were unfriendly as they stared at Lin Dong's group. The crowd standing outside the middle area parted their lips as they looked at both parties. Both parties have exposed their anger and started bickering immediately. Hence, it seems like it was impossible to seek a peaceful resolution for today's matter. All of you should be aware of the rules and I shall not elaborate. The party that wins 3 out of 5 rounds is the winner and the winner will take half of the other party's territory. Do you have any questions? The man wearing green clothes looked at Lin Dong. He paused before speaking. "My tribe is quite interested in your mysterious divine palace. Hence, if you hand it over voluntarily, we might allow your deep lightning mountain to continue living in the Beast War region. I think that it will be more appropriate to discuss these issues after you win, am I right? Lindong gently smiled. Standing beside him, a fierce glint filled Little Flame's eyes. Did these fellows assume that Lindong's group would lose even before the fight begins? Evidently, the green-clothed man did not expect Lindong to rebut him, as he was slightly startled. Promptly, he nodded in a nonchalant fashion. However, a chill was revealed on the corner of his lips. Since you enjoy embarrassing yourselves, we will do as you please. HMPH, we still do not know who is going to end up embarrassing themselves. The Golden Ape Demon Commander cried out furiously. Clenching his large hand, a black metal rod appeared in a flash. After which, the body of his rod shook and even the air itself was torn apart. The green-clothed man glanced indifferently at the Golden Ape Demon Commander, before he promptly stomped on the ground. The land in front of him shook and the ground actually rose. After the dust scattered, a 10,000 feet large giant stage was formed. Tung Feng, Tung Lin. The both of you should go together. End this fight as quickly as possible. The green-clothed man commanded in a faint voice. The Eastern King Tung Feng and the Western King Tung Lin nodded. After which, their bodies moved before they appeared on the huge stage. Their eyes looked downwards at the large group from the Four Titans Palace, before their arrogant laughter spread. Who dares to fight us? I will deal with Tung Feng. The Golden Ape Demon Commander tightened the grip over his metal rod and spoke in a deep voice. This was their first match and they had to do their best. Otherwise, it might end up demoralizing everyone else. Leave Tung Lin to me. The Ghost Condor Demon Commander also stepped forward. Both of them knew the importance of the first and the second match. Although they knew about Lindong's and Little Flame's strength, the opponents in front of them were not simple individuals. Therefore, even if they were to fight, there was no guarantee of victory. Lindong was naturally aware of their worries. However, he did not say anything. All he did was to nod his head. The two of them did not say anything else after seeing this. They moved their bodies and leaped onto the stage, before they appeared in front of Tung Feng and Tung Lin respectively. The four of them were in a face-off. As they stared at each other, an icy cold ferocity gushed forth. Meanwhile, a majestic and mighty aura slowly emerged from their bodies and reverberated across the sky. For ultimate samsara stage practitioners. Everyone stared at the vast and mighty ripples in the sky, before their eyes involuntarily turned heated. Both parties were the top experts from their respective regions, and it was truly difficult to tell who would emerge victorious in this clash. The natural flowing air in their surroundings seemed to have stiffened at this moment. The pressure radiating from the stage caused the expressions of many powerful individuals to turn pale. Lindong's eyes were staring intently at the stage. In the next moment, he suddenly narrowed his eyes. That was because he suddenly heard the sound of thunder. Wild gales blew before vast and mighty yuan power wrapped around those four figures. They looked just like meteorites, as they suddenly charged forward and flew across the sky. After which, they clashed violently in an extremely shocking fashion. Boom boom. Thunder continuously reverberated across the stage. For glowing figures crossed and fought with each other at lightning speed. In fact, the entire space became distorted. Wild and violent natural yuan power gathered in a crazy fashion, and even the sky became much dimmer due to this wild and violent clash. The expressions of Lindong's group were solemn as they stared at the intense fight occurring on the stage. Both parties were at the samsara stage and had similar strength. However, the Tung Feng duo had an advantage in terms of their bloodline. This was because the both of them were from the Blood Vulture tribe, which was one of the 8 king tribes. Although they were not as powerful as the 4 overlord tribes, they still had a significant upper hand when up against the Golden Ape Demon Commander and the Ghost Condor Demon Commander. However, this was not a massive advantage that could not be breached. Moreover, the Golden Ape Demon Commander duo were smart and they knew when to fight and when to dodge. After all, they were also extremely powerful, and it was very difficult for the Tung Feng duo to completely overwhelm them. Of course, they did not sincerely believe that they were able to defeat the Tung Feng duo. As of now, they only wished to drag this fight out and end it with a draw. For them, this was equivalent to a victory. Big brother, those two fellows are really powerful. Little Flame had a grave expression. He could naturally tell that the Teng Feng duo had the advantage in this frightening clash occurring on the stage. They are after all members of the Blood Vulture tribe, and it is very difficult to deal with them. However, we do not hope for a victory. All we hope for is that they do not make any mistakes. As long as we can force a draw, it will be considered as our victory. Regardless, we are indeed lacking in terms of our foundation when compared to Mang Mountain. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander said in a deep voice. Force a draw, her. Lin Dong was staring at the stage, while his brows were gently furrowed. For some unknown reason, he felt like it was not going to be an easy task to force a draw. Nonetheless, he also understood that unless one had some special techniques, it was very difficult to emerge victorious in a fight between peers. Bang! On the stage, four figures violently crossed each other. After which, many large cracks spread across the surface of the stage before four figures were thrown back 10,000 feet, with their legs rubbing against the ground. At the moment, the four of them had rather grave expressions and their breathing had become much more ragged. Clearly, the ferocious clash from before took a heavy toll on both parties. If you want to defeat us, I'm afraid that it isn't going to be as simple as you imagine. The Golden Ape Demon Commander held his metal rod and spoke in a deep voice. Is that so? Teng Feng laughed coldly upon hearing this. He turned his head to look at the green-clothed man behind him. When the latter saw his act, he gently nodded his head. Warm-up is over. Next, I will allow you country bumpkins to see who the real four titans are. A tinge of ridicule appeared on Teng Feng's face. Following which, he took a step forward together with Teng Lin. After which, they clenched their hands before a bright light pillar slowly took shape in their hands. An extremely frightening ripple suddenly swept across the place the moment this light pillar was formed. A low and deep roar was emitted from the hands of the Teng Feng duo. The light pillars gradually took shape before it transformed into two 10,000 feet large ancient stone pillars. Meanwhile, there was a green dragon and white tiger symbol present on each stone pillar respectively. Is that? Lin Dong's pupils suddenly shrunk when he saw the large ancient stone pillars in their hands. The item ranked 17th on the ancient divine object ranking. For divine beast immortal suppression pillars. Two ancient stone pillars flickered with dazzling radiance as they appeared in the hands of the Teng Feng duo. A green dragon symbol and a white tiger symbol were respectively engraved on the pillars. An astonishing but faint dragon and tiger roar were emitted. For divine beast immortal suppression pillars. Lin Dong's expression was grave as he gazed upon the ancient stone pillars that had appeared in the hands of the Teng Feng duo. He had managed to identify them immediately. These ancient stone pillars were the 17th ranked for divine beast immortal suppression pillars on the ancient divine object ranking. It was unexpected that such a divine object would appear in the hands of the five kings of Mang Mountain. By the side, Little Flame and the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's expressions also changed slightly at this moment. They could detect a great and mighty pressure from the ancient stone pillars. In the hands of people with Teng Feng's strength, the power of such a divine item could be described as earth-shaking. The increase in battle power due to these weapons was enough to break this stalemate. There are a total of 4 pillars which make up the 4 divine beast immortal suppression pillars. The ones in the Teng Feng duo's hands should be the green dragon and white tiger pillars. From the looks of it, they have separated the 4 pillars, one for each person. Despite this, any one of these 4 pillars alone is already extremely powerful. Golden Ape and Ghost Condor are likely about to be defeated. Lin Dong said in a deep voice. Damn it. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander tightly clenched his teeth. He did not expect that Mang Mountain would have such a powerful ancient divine object. In this way, the equilibrium had been broken. The entire place had fallen into an uproar because of the 2 ancient stone pillars. Some people sighed inwardly. As expected of Mang Mountain. Such resources were indeed far greater than the 3 demon commanders of the Beast War region. Ha ha, let's end this. Teng Feng looked at the now ugly expressions of the Golden Ape Demon Commander duo and heartily laughed at the sky. Without any unnecessary words, he waved his sleeve. The green dragon pillar and the white tiger pillar in their hands whistled forward, turning into two 10,000 feet bright lights that tore through space in an unstoppable manner. Finally, they smashed towards the Golden Ape Demon Commander duo with lightning speed. Roar! The Golden Ape Demon Commander let out a furious roar as resplendent golden light burst forth from the golden armor on his body. Strange patterns flowed within the golden light. Clearly, the golden armor on his body was also a divine object. However, it was merely an ordinary divine object and was unable to leave its name on the ancient divine object ranking. The Ghost Condor Demon Commander also sensed the danger. He let out a sharp screech as his body swiftly swelled while black feathers frantically grew on the surface his body. In the blink of an eye, he had turned into a 10,000 feet large ghost condor. The defenses around his body was unleashed to the limit. Rumble. Two 10,000 feet bright lights pierced through the void when their defenses were activated. After which, they ruthlessly smashed onto the bodies of the two in front of countless pairs of eyes. A deep and loud noise thundered across the area while incomparably wild and violent energy spread like a storm. This crazy clash did not end up in a stalemate. The golden light and the black light around the two commanders were shattered under the exceptionally overwhelming bright light. A muffled sound appeared, and the two figures miserably shot backwards in front of the many stunned pairs of eyes. Finally, they smashed heavily onto the ground, forming a deep 1,000 feet long gully. Ha ha, you wish to battle my Mang Mountain with just this ability? You really overestimate yourselves. The Teng Feng duo stood in the air and laughed wildly. Soon after, with a wave of their hands, the ancient stone pillars returned. This battle was already over. Many pitying gazes looked towards the miserable states of the Golden Ape Demon Commander duo. Their appearance was extremely terrible. The golden armor on the Golden Ape Demon Commander had split open. Evidently, they were no match for the Teng Feng duo when they were wielding the for Divine Beast Immortal Suppression pillars. Lin Dong pursed his lips as he watched this scene. With a wave of his hand, his men swiftly rushed forward and helped the two of them back. We lost. The Golden Ape Demon Commander's face was a little pale and there were traces of blood hanging from the corner of his mouth. However, he had a slightly ashamed look in his eyes when he looked at Lin Dong. Originally, they had planned to create a good start by being the first to fight. However, they had ended up being completely defeated. Moreover, they had simultaneously lost 2 rounds. It is not a problem. Lin Dong chuckled. His young face continued to remain calm. This calmness made the Golden Ape Demon Commander duo feel slightly better. These bastards. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander gnashed his teeth in anger. The Teng Feng duo had the bloodline advantage to begin with. Yet, they still took out such a powerful ancient divine object. This was practically bullying. No matter how one obtains it, victory is all that matters in the arena. We cannot complain about what they have done. Lin Dong shook his head and softly said, "We have already lost 2 rounds. There will no longer be any chances left if we lose another. Shall I fight this round?" The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander hesitated for a moment before he asked in a probing fashion. However, he did not have much confidence. His strength was on par with the Golden Ape Demon Commander duo. If the other party still had the other for Divine Beast Immortal Suppression pillars, it was likely that he would also be defeated. I might not lose if I have the 9 Sky Heavy Mountain, the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander said. Soon after, he seemed to have realized something and shut his mouth in an awkward manner. The 9 Sky Heavy Mountain, which originally belonged to him, had been snatched away by Little Martin. Lin Dong smiled. He mused for a moment before turning around and grabbing the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's hand. Soon after, he withdrew his hand in front of the stunned expressions of those around him. This? The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander opened and closed his hand as surprise flashed across his face. "I will lend it to you," Lin Dong smilingly replied. "All right." Joy surged in the eyes of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, before he heavily nodded. His body moved and he leaped onto the stage. His eyes shot towards the direction of Mang Mountain as he coldly cried out, "Bring it! Ha ha, don't you think that you have embarrassed yourselves enough?" Teng Hua let out a mocking laughter. After which, he also leaped onto the stage and cocked his head slightly, showing a face full of playfulness. With a clench of his hand, a fiery red ancient stone pillar appeared. There was a vermilion bird symbol swirling around it. The vermilion bird pillar of the 4 divine beast immortal suppression pillars was indeed in his hands. Teng Hua fiddled with the vermilion bird pillar as he mocked the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. "Aren't you going to scram now that you have seen this thing?" The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander laughed coldly. Both of his hands were tightly clenched as majestic and boundless Yuan power spread. Life and death chi merged perfectly within the boundless Yuan power. Still planning on stubbornly resisting? Forget it, I will finish you off. Teng Hua faintly laughed. He did not have any intentions of warming up. With a wave of his sleeve, the vermilion bird pillar shot towards the sky. Bright red flames spread and the temperature of the surroundings abruptly soared. Evidently, he had decided to use his strongest technique to smash the morale of the 4 Titans Palace with a single strike. Bang! A monstrous flaming light came whistling over, appearing in the air above the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander in front of many pitying eyes. Several people quietly sighed as they watched this scene. The 4 Titans Palace had really lost all face today. All 3 rounds had been lost and it was basically impossible for them to hinder Mang Mountain at all. The stage cracked apart at this moment as the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander lifted his head and looked at the fierce attack that was unfurling towards him. He gritted his teeth and swung his sleeve. An azure light beam suddenly shot out, growing as it transformed into a giant blue bell. A majestic wave seemed to surge from this giant bell. The fiery red light ruthlessly smashed into the giant bell. However, the expected scene of the bell crumbling did not occur. The giant bell proudly stood, continuously ringing as it directly blocked the vermilion bird pillar attack. What? Outside the stage, the expressions of Teng Lin and the others changed after seeing this. That is, the sea calming bell. Luo Tong slightly narrowed his eyes as he looked at the giant azure bell. His voice contained some bewilderment. The 26th ranked sea calming bell on the divine object ranking? Teng Lin's group was startled and they quickly frowned. It seemed that this 4 Titans Palace had also come prepared. Although the sea calming bell was inferior in ranking to the 4 divine beast immortal suppression pillars, Teng Hua currently only had the vermilion bird pillar in his hands and its full power could not be fully unleashed. Naturally, it was very difficult to break the defense of the sea calming bell. It looks like Teng Hua will not be able to win this round. However, he will not lose either. Luo Tong said in a faint voice. No matter. Now that the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander has fought, those 2 are the only ones left. They have yet to reach the Samsara stage and aren't worth mentioning. Teng Lin said in a cold voice. By the side, Ting Shan, who had yet to fight, grinned. His eyes were filled with a baleful aura. You can be rest assured that I will make them despair. On the stage, Teng Hua was startled when he saw that his attack had been blocked, but rage quickly filled his heart. A thought passed through his mind and 100,000 feet large light suddenly exploded from the vermilion bird pillar and attacked the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander in an even more ferocious manner. However, the latter relied on the power of the sea calming bell to receive all of the storm-like attacks without falling into a disadvantageous position. Although the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander had received the attacks, his counter-attacks were also unable to break through Teng Hua's vermilion bird pillar. Both parties continued to exchange blows, but everyone could tell that it was difficult for a victor to be decided. No one could win this round. Clearly, both parties were well aware of this. Hence, they helplessly gave up after continuing for a while and both of them withdrew together. This battle could be considered a draw. Some exclamations sounded due to this unexpected result. Originally, they thought that the 4 Titans Palace would be completely defeated this round. Never would they have imagined that they would manage to hold out a little longer. However, when everyone looked at the 4 Titans Palace's remaining Lindong and Little Flame, all of them silently shook their heads. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander might have managed to slightly redeem them, but it was obvious that the Four Titans Palace no longer had any powerful experts. On the other hand, Mang Mountain still had Ting Shan and the strongest Luo Tong. It was a rather bleak situation for the Four Titans Palace. "Big brother, it's my turn." Little Flame deeply inhaled a breath of air and said in a low voice. Lin Dong nodded. He gently grasped Little Flame's hand as a meaningful look flashed across those black eyes. Little Flame slowly stepped forward under the attentive gazes that seemed to fill the entire sky. Soon after, his feet pushed off the ground and his metal tower-like figure shot across the sky before landing heavily onto the stage. Waves of low roars abruptly erupted from the tiger-devouring army when Little Flame moved. Soon after, all of them sat down. As they breathed, majestic and vast black light spread in the air, giving off an intimidating and terrifying aura. Little Flame's face was icy. His foot heavily stomped, causing the ground to shake as the monstrous black light zipped towards him. Finally, it turned into many rays of light which entered his body. Crack! As this vast and mighty energy poured into Little Flame, his originally powerful-looking body swelled to several times its size. Green veins pulsed on the surface of his skin like horned dragons while waves of explosive power rippled. The present Little Flame had merged with the aura of the tiger-devouring army and his strength was now comparable to a Samsara stage expert. There was a relatively tremendous gap between the perfect profound death stage and the Samsara stage. Additionally, Little Flame did not possess the power of the ancestral symbol. Therefore, he could only rely on merging his aura with the tiger-devouring army he had trained. This fellow is really amazing. He is actually able to perfectly use the strength of that army as his own. There was no lack of sharp-eyed individuals in this place. Graveness emerged in their eyes when they witnessed this scene. All of them understood just how difficult this kind of merger technique was. After all, it was practically impossible to simply receive and use power that belonged to someone else. Unless the understanding between him and that army had reached a perfect level, even the slightest mistake would cause this borrowed strength to blast apart his body like a bomb until it was filled with wounds. The demon region did not lack peak experts with powerful armies. However, even they did not dare to carelessly use such a method. This was because they could not withstand the backlash. Commander Yang's technique is becoming increasingly frightening. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander trio had surprise on their faces as they looked at Little Flame's present aura. The current Little Flame was clearly much stronger compared to 2 months ago at the Divine Item Mountain range. This time around, even they felt that they stood little chance against him. Lin Dong nodded. With the help of the tiger-devouring army, the present Little Flame was not weaker than a Samsara stage expert. Even though Ting Shan possessed one of the 4 Divine Beast Immortal Suppression Pillars, it would not be easy to beat Little Flame. However, the current situation is still rather terrible for us. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander bitterly laughed. Out of 3 rounds, they had lost 2 rounds and 1 round had ended in a draw. Forget about losing another round, they could not even let another round end in a draw. Therefore, Little Flame must emerge victorious if they wanted to turn the situation around. Only then would they have a chance. Otherwise, they will lose this battle. The Golden Ape Demon Commander duo bitterly smiled. Their eyes were a little ashamed. After all, the reason that they had ended up in such a disadvantageous situation was because of their 2 defeats from earlier. Don't be hasty. Let's take things slowly. We have not been completely defeated yet. Lin Dong smiled. The current situation was indeed very disadvantageous to them, but there was still a trace of hope. It was not his style to simply give up like this. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander trio looked at Lin Dong, who remained calm even at this moment, and felt some admiration in their hearts. They were indeed a little inferior when it came to such mental fortitude. The latter was able to get Little Flame, an untamable and ferocious tiger, to willingly address him as Big Brother. He did possess his unique charm. Brother Lin Dong, I will return this sea-calming bell to you. My earlier result was all thanks to it. When he saw that the fight had yet to start, the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander clenched his hand and handed the small azure bell to Lin Dong. Lin Dong smilingly received it. He glanced at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, whose eyes contained some desire and reluctance, and said, "I'll first take it back then. However, we are all on the same boat in future. If I find it appropriate, I might perhaps gift it to you. Of course, everyone else will also be gifted something when that time comes." The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander trio were startled when they heard this. Their expressions did not change, but joy flashed across their eyes. For practitioners of their level, ordinary divine object no longer contained any attraction. Only those divine objects on the ancient divine object ranking possessed a great allure. However, such items were usually something hard to come by. However, this was not much of a problem to Lin Dong, who had the divine item treasury. Lin Dong turned his head and looked towards the stage as a subtle arc was lifted from the corners of his mouth. He would really be a little foolish if he did not accept these three samsara stage experts who had been delivered straight to his doorstep. A mere perfect profound death stage expert can barely show his face only by relying on these techniques. Laughter was emitted from the direction of the Mang Mountain group while Lin Dong was thinking. Teng Shan quickly appeared on the stage. He looked at Little Flame below, who had a frightening aura, and involuntarily curled his lips. Although he had mocked in this fashion, there was no contempt in Teng Shan's eyes. The aura from Little Flame's body was sufficient to make him treat the latter in a serious manner. Little Flame's eyes were indifferent as he glanced at Teng Shan. However, he did not retort. With a grasp of his hand, a giant black hammer appeared in a flash. The land around Little Flame broke, forming many cracks after this giant hammer appeared. 9 Cauldron Divine Hammer. Teng Shan looked at the huge hammer in Little Flame's hands, which was covered with mysterious cauldron symbols. His eyes immediately became focused. "You do have some ability," Teng Shan said in a deep voice. He quickly grabbed with his hand as an ancient stone pillar appeared in a flash. There was the black tortoise light symbol on the stone pillar. A low and deep roar was faintly emitted. He clearly did not dare to be the slightest bit slow in front of Little Flame, who was wielding the 9 Cauldron Divine Hammer. Roar? The arm with which Little Flame was holding the 9 Cauldron Divine Hammer gradually became thicker and his eyes suddenly turned scarlet. A roar emerged from his throat as he stomped on the ground and his body tore through the air with a swoosh sound. He instantly appeared in the air above Teng Shan and the 9 Cauldron Divine Hammer was powerfully swung downwards. At that moment, even the invisible space itself was collapsing. The ancient stone pillar also arrived in a ferocious manner at this moment. It ruthlessly collided with the divine hammer. A frightening storm erupted between them and the low booming sound caused countless individuals to feel pain in their ears. What a frightening clash! Many pairs of eyes were suffused with astonishment as they watched the vicious clash between the two figures. This barbaric clash was extremely shocking to the eye. The two people on the stage had no intentions of avoiding any attacks. Every clash was a head-on collision of divine hammer and stone pillar, causing the space to collapse wherever the two figures passed. The remnant force tore giant gully after gully on the ground below. It was another fight where it was difficult to determine the victor. That Commander Yang of Deep Lightning Mountain is really ferocious. He is actually on par with the black tortoise pillar-wielding Teng Shan. That's right. However, the 4 Titans Palace's situation is quite bad. Even if Commander Yang can tie against Teng Shan, with 2 losses and 2 draws out of 5 matches, they would have already lost. How unfortunate. The 4 Titans Palace Foundation is a little weak. It is unable to compare with a giant faction like the Mang Mountain, which had been established for a long time. Some regretful voices spread around the place as the fight between the two gradually became more intense. The eyes of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander and his group were filled with worry. They glanced at Lin Dong by the side, only to find that the latter's face was still as calm as a deep lake. He appeared as though he was unconcerned about the disadvantageous situation before them. A storm unfurled as the two figures touched and pulled apart. Blood dripped from their hands when they landed on the ground. Heh, how powerful. I never imagined that a day will come where I am forced into a tie by a perfect profound death stage expert. Teng Shan's blood-covered hand stroked the black tortoise pillar. He laughed coldly and said, "However, let's end it here. This match will end in a draw." All of you have lost. Little Flame lifted his scarlet eyes as a bloodthirsty expression climbed onto the corners of his mouth. Lost? My black tortoise pillar specializes in defense. Even though you have the 9-cauldron divine hammer, you will not be able to break my defense. If not a draw, do you consider this beating me? Tingshan mocked. In that case, watch me break this turtle shell of yours. Little Flame laughed. His body charged and soared upwards as the 9-cauldron divine hammer in his hand suddenly swelled, growing to 10,000 feet in size. The stage had already completely collapsed before the divine hammer landed. Black Tortoise Wall. Tingshan sneered upon seeing this. The ancient stone pillar in his hand jerked as a monstrous brilliance swept out from it. Subsequently, the light gathered and turned into an incomparably large black tortoise light image above him. This light image quietly stood there. However, a frightening Armageddon-like aura emanated from it. This black tortoise light figure clearly possessed an extremely terrifying defensive power. Boom! The titanic divine hammer fell with a boom. However, the divine hammer suddenly paused just as it was about to land on the black tortoise light imagine. Little Flame flicked his finger and a black light shot downwards. It was a round black bead. The black bead exploded above the black tortoise light image and an endless viscous black light seemed to fill the sky as it landed on the black tortoise light image. Dense white fog emerged from the latter's powerful defense in the face of the viscous black light, and the entire light figure was eroded in an instant. This unexpected turn of events had exceeded everyone's expectations. Even Tingshan was stupefied. He did not expect that his most powerful defense would actually be broken by a black bead. How is this possible? Tingshan cried out involuntarily. However, before he could understand what had happened, a giant divine hammer once again descended from the sky and mercilessly smashed onto his body. A low and deep noise spread as everyone watched Tingshan's body fly backwards in a miserable fashion. He wildly spat out some blood along the way, and finally crashed onto the ground after flying over 10,000 feet. Countless pairs of eyes looked at the unmoving Tingshan on the ground. No one knew if he was dead or alive. The originally noisy planes had instantly become deathly silent. Tingshan had actually been defeated. This video will end here.